Daryl,
Hey there.
how you doing?
Doing great now. Everybody out there, it is exactly 12 noon Eastern Standard Time. So we will go ahead and jump right into today's wonderful session. I'm Daryl Minus. I am the Vice President of Enrollment Management and Student Success here at Southside Virginia Community College. And I am excited to welcome everyone to our final of 3 Profiles in Excellence virtual fireside chats during the month of February. As we wind down Black History Month, this series has been all about recognizing Black men and Black women who are inspirational examples of Black excellence. People who have not only accomplished a great deal in their respective fields, but have also committed themselves to positively impacting others. So with that being said, I am so pleased to introduce Dr. Tyjaun Lee as my guest today. Let me tell you a little bit about her. Dr. Lee, who has more than 20 years of progressive experience in higher education, serves as the campus president of the Penn Valley campus at Metropolitan Community College in Kansas City, Missouri. Prior to assuming her position at MCC Penn Valley, she served as vice president for student services at Prince George's Community College in Maryland. She has served as an associate vice president of enrollment management and student services at Tidewater Community College in the Virginia Community College system, and as the director of counseling at Cuyahoga Community College in Cleveland, Ohio. Dr. Lee was honored in 2020 with the Paragon Award for New Presidents from Phi Theta Kappa, which is the academic honor society for students at 2-year colleges. She is the past president of the American Association for Women in Community Colleges, which is an affiliate council of the American Association of Community Colleges. She has served as past president for the National Council on Student Development as well. She's received the 2019 Tribute to Success Award from Connections to Success, which helps people living in poverty become economically self-sufficient. Dr. Lee, who was a Cleveland native, completed her undergraduate and graduate studies at Ohio University in Athens, Ohio, where she received her doctorate in educational leadership with an emphasis in higher education administration. Dr. Lee is also a member of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated. Had to include that. Welcome, Dr. Lee. How are you?
Hey, Daryl, you can call me Tyjaun. You know we're on first name basis. I'm absolutely amazing this Monday morning. How are you? It's 11 o'clock here in Kansas City.
It is so great, and we will definitely go with Daryl and Tyjaun today. These are 2 old colleagues getting together. What a pleasure it is to come full circle like this at this moment for you and me. I remember you and I first crossed paths in 2007 at Tidewater, where you were the AVP and I was hired as a Dean of Student Services. And I've got to say this just to start things off. I remember my initial impressions of you, and there were two of them. They're good. Don't worry, they're good. My first impression of you was, this woman is serious about the business of serving students. So that was the first one. And the second one, after getting to work with you for a little while, was, and still is, if I ask Tyjaun to give me her perspective or advice, she's going to give it to me straight.
You don't have to guess.
Exactly. So a lot has happened to both of us since then. So it's just great to have you today, to be able to talk with you and see you, during these pandemic times. Just a wonderful chance to be able to reconnect.
I know. I am just honored that you selected me to be a part of this program. I am, uberly excited for you and for all the things that you've done on your journey. I send you messages all the time. So I'm just glad that we have been able to reconnect and to share stories of people who have gone through some things, but they got on the other side of it and became what God wanted them to be.
Absolutely. Well, without further ado, let's jump right into some conversation today. And you know where I'd like to start. It's really easy to look at you now and see you as president, your accomplishments, all your accolades, all your achievements. But I'd be honored if you would just share with the audience a little bit about your personal journey, because the road that you traveled to get to the point of even going to college, it wasn't easy, was it?
No, so thank you for this opportunity again. I remind my students and I share with my students that, don't let these Tory Burch heels fool you, because they weren't always high heels and they weren't always name brand shoes that I had on. So, growing up in Cleveland, Ohio, from a single parent home, my mother had me when she was 16 years old, and she didn't know that naming me Tyjaun was going to follow me into my career, nor that I would marry someone whose last name would be Lee. And when I applied for jobs, they would think that I was an Asian man until I showed up, all African-American woman that I am. And so, growing up in Cleveland, it was not, it really wasn't easy at all. A lot of our students come from the background that I had, growing up in a single parent home. My mother, she got addicted to drugs and alcohol when I was in high school, but it got worse as I went to college. And so my great grandmother, who was like my pillar, she was my rock, made sure that my brother and I had what we needed in order to just basically survive. So she lived on Central Avenue, which was probably maybe 45 minutes from where we actually lived, which was on 79th and Woodland. And so we literally had to walk from our house to her house in the summertime, and then sometimes in the winter when we needed to get home to get prepared for school the next day. So, just growing up in Cleveland, people say, well, where are you from? You grew up in Shaker Heights. And I'm like, no, I didn't really grow up in Shaker Heights. They're like, well, yeah, you did, because, you went to college, you got your degrees. And I say, well, no, I'm from the urban metropolitan area. And they're like, well, what's that? And, I share where, you heard of Concrete Jungles projects. And that's where I grew up. And so, when people say, well, no, that's not where you came from, then I start telling stories like this one. So I went to Audubon Junior High School, which was the worst high school in Cleveland public school system. When I say the worst, that's where all the bad things happen. And so, one day I got called to the principal's office, I often get called to the principal's office, but it wasn't always my fault. I'm gonna blame somebody else.
Yes.
But it wasn't, but this time it really wasn't my fault. So I was sitting in math class and I was actually paying attention today because I didn't really like math. And I got my name, Tyjaun Fletcher, come to the principal's office. I thought, well, no, I'm not doing anything. So I go to the office, I see my mother sitting in there, and I'm like, uh-oh, now I'm really in trouble if she's in here. Like, she left work, when your mother leaves work and she has to come to your school, that's a whole nother type of story.
Absolutely.
That's a whole nother type of story. So she was sitting in there, and there was a bag on the principal's table, and it had nunchucks. Remember nunchucks?
Yes.
Nunchucks, some kind of like big metal thing, and then a couple of knives, right? And so he said, well, there was a young lady who brought this to school intentionally to kill you. And I thought, oh, well, I wonder, well, what did I do to her? Well, it was all about a boy. I didn't even know the boy liked me, first of all. Now, he was fine, but I didn't even know he liked me. So after that, my mother said, okay, you are not going to West Tech, which was, at the time we were being bused from the inner city up to the West Side to go to school. She said, you will not be bused to West Tech. You will go someplace else. And so she made it her mission to get me out of Cleveland Public Schools and go to Erie Catholic High School. So going to Erie Catholic High School really changed the trajectory of my life, because I was around young women who, some came from single parents, some had mothers and fathers, but they all were going to go to college. They all had the vision to go to college. So, you know, my great grandmother, she told me early on, the one thing that no one can take away from you is your education. That's the only thing. They can take everything but your education. So I thought, okay, well, they're going to college. You know what? I'm going to go to college too. So I told my mother I'm going to college. Now, I didn't know about a FAFSA. I didn't know about an admissions application. I didn't know that I needed to take the SAT or to take the ACT. I didn't know any of that. So I went and I talked to one of the nuns, and she said, yes, you need to do all of this, and you can absolutely do this, Tyjaun, and I'm going to hold you to doing this. So I applied to several schools. Ohio University gave me the most money. I figured, well, I need to go where they're giving me the most money. I went to school. I went to school with 2 trash bags in the trunk. All I had was 2 trash bags in the trunk. And the trunk was because my great grandmother, she saved up. She had a speakeasy. You all know what a speakeasy, some of you may not, but you know what a speakeasy is, right there. So she had a speakeasy, and she saved up her tips, and she had 2 Crown Royal bags that she gave to Crown Royal. You know, it's been around. She saved 2 Crown Royal bags and gave them to my paternal grandmother and said, get her what she needs in order for her to go to school, because I don't want her coming back here without a degree. So I get to OU.
Yes, and see, that was the perfect segue, you know, and before we go there, it's important that everybody listening, I hope that that was as impactful for you as it is for me whenever I hear that, because when you look at Ty now and you see where she is, it's great for our students to also understand that no matter what your origins are or where you come from, your pathway can still be one of success. And so that's why I appreciate you being transparent with us, Ty, because everyone sees the sparkling gold and glitter at the end, but they don't know from whence you came and what you had to overcome. So transition. So you get to Ohio University as a first-generation college student. So were you ready for that? Were you ready for that?
So sort of, kind of. That's a
Yeah.
whole new word. Sort of, kind of is a whole new word. And I'll say that because I was ready academically, but I wasn't ready to be one of 2 Black girls on a floor full of white people, or being the only one in a classroom of 500 students, and I'm the only one, right? And then having to become the voice for all the Black students and all Black people, right? So, but while I was there, something happened. My grandmother passed. And my mother was so far removed and on drugs that I had to go back to Cleveland, get my brother, and he and I had to share a room while I was in college. And so I became a mother, an aunt, a sister, and I had to remain a college student because me and my great grandmother had this deal that I was going to finish and get this degree. And so subsequently, he came, he lived with me. I enrolled him in Athens High School. He did all sports. We had an agreement that whoever had the test for that next day could actually sleep in a bed. The other person, you had to find a place to sleep. So I was the one who was either on the floor or on the couch, but we made it work. And you know, being prepared is twofold. One, you have to be prepared academically, but then you have to be prepared socially. So, you know, I partied a little bit, but then when I saw that I really needed to keep my grades up, I had to party less. Because Ohio University was known for being the party school, right? And so having to make that adjustment while still taking care of my brother and going to school, I had to grow up fast and realize fast that my academics were going to either make me or break me. And coming from where I come from, it was only going to make me a better person, and it was not going to break me. So I had to hunker down and get to class and get to studying and doing study tables and so on to keep my grades up and to keep my scholarship. So I was prepared on some ends, but on some ways I had to learn quickly.
So you weren't alone in that journey. Many of us had a similar experience, maybe not with the same elements that you dealt with, but you know, I know for me, my first semester at Hampton University, you know, how close I came to not going back after that first semester, because I couldn't handle that newfound independence. And I had to readjust my whole focus. So what you're saying resonates on so many levels.
And for community college students, people think that, well, they're a special kind of student. Well, they're only special because they're going to a commuter campus. But many community colleges are comprehensive community colleges and have the same services and programs that four-year institutions have. And so they have to make that same adjustment, right?
Yes.
But their adjustment is often greater because they have to go home. They have to go care for a child, or they have to go care for a parent, or they have to go back to the hood where their boys are on the corner, like, well, why are you carrying that backpack? You trying to be better than somebody. So then when they come to us, we have to make sure that we wrap our arms around them to let them know that you can be successful and that your current situation should not determine your destination at all whatsoever.
Absolutely, absolutely. So you persevered and you got your undergraduate degree from Ohio University, and then also your master's degree from Ohio University. So fast forward just a bit and talk a little bit about your pursuit of the doctorate. What prompted you at that point to even want to go get it?
I had two women in my life at Ohio University. One has since passed on, Melissa Exum and Christine Taylor. And so they called me Cubs, and because I was young, because I was Cubs. And so they were 2 of 8 women of color at Ohio University who were in administrative roles. And I thought there has got to be more Black women around here in higher education. And they were like, no, no, this is it. This is 8 is literally enough here at OU. That's what they used to say. And I said, well, I think I might want to go into higher education. And Melissa said, if you want to go into higher education, you have to get your doctorate degree. And I was like, absolutely not. I got this bachelor's degree. I stayed and got my master's degree. So my younger brother, he could finish high school, and I didn't want to have to take him back to Cleveland. I was like, I got to get a job. I'm tired of these student loans. And she was like, no, for Black women, the standard is different, because you will be measured not only by your academics, but by your credentials. So you will need your doctorate degree if you want to advance in higher education. And I was like, oh, no. Okay, fine. Let me just.
Okay, fine.
Yeah, okay, fine. That was my standard response was, okay, fine. I'll go ahead and do it. So I was the youngest person in my doctoral program, and then the youngest to graduate. So I finished my doctorate degree when I was 26 years old. And so when I walked across the stage, here's a funny story. My name is hard to say. And I was like, they will not say my name wrong walking across this stage. So I held up the line until they said Tyjaun Lee, till they said it right. My grandmother said, only my child will actually hold up the commencement line. But I finished. And I finished in 2.5 years, because I went fall, spring, summer, until I actually finished. And in between there, I got engaged and got married. And I tell people, please don't plan a wedding and do a dissertation at the same time. It is absolutely, you have to have multitasking goes to a whole nother level. And so does stress. But I was able to finish my doctorate degree at a young age and then go and get a job. Now, the fallback to that was I was told, well, you're not going to get a job because you don't have any work experience. Well, I had some work experience because I worked in the Office of Graduate Studies as a minority recruiter. And so I said, well, how I have this experience, so I just need to build it in such a way where it complements the job that I'm applying for. But then also when I go interview, I need to be able to explain that while I only have this level of work experience, I do have this skill set, and then I have this credentials at the age of 27.
Amazing. It took me every bit of my 4 years to get mine. And I was working full time as I did it. So the fact that you were able to accomplish that with everything else going on in that time frame is a tribute to the focus that you had during that time. So you achieved that. At what point did you recognize that, I guess, the mission of the community college really resonated with you as far as like aligning your professional trajectory with a career in the sector?
My mother actually graduated from Cuyahoga Community College, the Metro campus, where I went back to become the director of counseling. So it was sort of like full circle because I remembered being in those hallways, having to sit while she was in class and then running around the places and going into the gym when we weren't supposed to, me and my brother, exploring the campus is what we called it, while she was in class. So I went back and I thought about it when I went to the business school. So I started off working at a 4-year business college in Cleveland, Ohio, which has since shut its doors. But being there and then creating partnerships with Cuyahoga Community College, with Cleveland State, I was able to begin to think, I think I need to be at the community college. And so I did something crazy. I left my job and went and did a performance-based contract with Cuyahoga and NASA. And so I was the executive director for the Science, Engineering, Mathematics, Aerospace Academy. And so after a year and a half, NASA said, well, we want to give it to another contractor. So what happened? I got laid off. And I was excited to be laid off because I can actually sit down and take a breath since I worked and went to school for 7 years straight and didn't stop. So so my supervisor at the time was he was the vice president at Tri-C over the whole district. And so he called me, he says, we have a director's position coming up and you would be perfect for it. And I was like, I don't know if I want to be a director of counseling. I really don't like talking to people a lot. He said, no, you just have to supervise people. He said, but they're all going to be older than you. And I was like, okay, fine. I'll do it. So I went and I became the director of counseling. And it was when I walked through those doors and I saw students, and I was like, man, this is going to be amazing. And just the hustle and bustle in student services, I was like, this is where I need to be. And just being able to work with faculty and help them get through whatever challenges they were going through personally, but then helping them understand that when a student comes in here, they should not sit for 4 hours because you're at lunch or you're at a meeting. Students actually come first. And I didn't care if they were older than me or not, we still were here to serve students. And so our counseling area became one of the best counseling centers that we had at Tri-C because we shortened the time that students had to wait. And it was just being in that counseling center just changed everything. And I had a dean of students who was she was amazing. And she gave me opportunities to serve on committees that I probably wouldn't have been able to serve on if I had not had her as a leader. So it was being there with my mother going to school and then coming back and being the director of counseling. And I said, this is where I'm supposed to be.
So, let's continue that train of thought that you're on right now. I mean, you talked about how that dean of student services just impacted you and gave you opportunities to grow and excel. I know I've had many mentors pour into me. They've given me, some tough, sometimes brutal, honest criticism. They were transparent enough to show me, where they failed, where they succeeded. And they gave me some good examples of just how to approach leadership by serving others first. How important has that mentorship been to you? And who are some of the key people or persons in your life on your career path that really influenced you?
I've had so many women and men leave thumbprints on my journey, and I call it mentoring by committee. So I tend to have mentors who I can call about style, clothing style. I have mentors who I can call about just basic leadership and dealing with difficult situations, difficult people. But, Melissa Exum and Christine Taylor, just on the onset of being in my path and guiding me to go into higher education and then to get that doctorate degree that I needed at a time when now I don't know if I would have been able to get one now because, working full time and just the complexities of life that has happened. I don't know if I'm so grateful that I did it when I did. And then just moving on, Glory McCall, who she got married, now she's Gloria McFadden. She was like the dean who stretched me and said, you can do something other than just be a director of counseling. And here's how you're going to go about doing it. But you know what? Now that I think about it, when I first met her, I asked her if she could be my mentor. And she said, well, why do you think you need a mentor? And I said, well, just to help guide me and like direct my path. She said, she's okay. but there's one other person who can do that. And I knew who she was talking about, you know, the big guy upstairs, right? And she said, so while I can be the person here to help you on the ground, he's a person that you're gonna have to lean on more. Now that, I said, okay. So, and she and I are still really good friends. But then, you know, you have people who come into your life who show you what not to do and show you how not to lead and show you how not to serve, you know. And so I've learned from those people as well. But, you know, Melissa, Gloria, you know, my current chancellor, they have really poured into me and allowed me to be my unapologetic, authentic self, but also how to lead in a manner that still affords people the opportunity to lead, but then to care about them. So being able to find that balance, and so I call it leading with love. And a lot of people, they're afraid to do that because they're like, well, this is a work environment. Well, it's not like you walking up to somebody saying, I love you all the time, but you care for them enough so that they know that you're in their corner, regardless of what ball they drop, the situation that they get in, but that you have their back regardless.
Ty, that's critical, you know, and thank you so much for sharing those pieces. You know, just you're having me reflect now as well. I mean, one of my mentors told me, you know, don't be afraid to stretch and be uncomfortable, you know, especially when you have real support behind you to try things and to succeed and to make mistakes, you know, and learn. You know, that's when you grow and you build capacity in places that you never thought that you had it. So,
Right.
I mean, that resonates so clearly. And the other piece that you mentioned, I think is worth emphasizing too. As much as people pour into us as leaders and give us cues to take and to be able to use and apply, you know, there are some things that people do when you see them in those positions and in those spaces that you can look at and say, okay, I know I should not travel that same way in a situation that I see. You know, one thing that I always talk about is we each have to have, in addition to mentorship, and as you mentioned, that connection with the man upstairs, you've got to have your own operating system at some point. Right. You have to program it, you've got to develop it, you've got to have a leadership compass that guides that. And remember that mentors can add value, but in the end, you know, your journey has to be authentic to you.
That's right. And, you know, I have we have team meetings, and, you know, I always tell my team, you know, you are absolutely enough for the work that we are doing here. You are absolutely enough, because sometimes they get, you know, we're at a large system, and so we're on a campus, and our campus flows, you know, but then they have to operate with district people, and they're like, well, how do I don't really want to do that. And I'm like, well, first you have to own it and know that you are absolutely enough to do this job. And so, and to trust all your instincts and remain committed to who we serve, which is students. Absolutely. Sometimes we forget that.
Absolutely. And part of our journey is having to be standing in the gap sometimes to remind people that that is our focus. Thank you. Right. Thank you. Let's talk a little bit about leadership, because that's one area where I find that you and I are very kindred spirits in so many ways. I guess, at what point did you feel you were ready for a college presidency? You know, how did you prepare for that transition? And I guess, what words of wisdom would you give to others that may be listening, who might want to aspire to be a community college president?
You know, when I started my journey in higher education, I had this whole notion of business cards. So, you know, you get a box of business cards. See, I remember this, the box of business cards. When they get down to just about right here, that's when I started to look for a job. And I only ordered one box. I didn't want two. I only wanted one, and please get 500. And so when my 500 got low, I would then go look at a job that I aspired to go into, and then identify those gaps. And when I identified those gaps, I would then go have a conversation with my supervisor and say, you know, here's some areas where I need development. Can you assist me in reaching the potential that I need in order to apply for a job similar to this. Now, keep in mind also that if there is a supervisor who they don't really want you to leave, then they will not give you those opportunities. And so there were some instances where I had to go and volunteer within organizations like my sorority or even community organizations to get the skill set to add to what I needed to fill in those gaps. So that's the first thing. So one, have a conversation with yourself about where you want to go. And then two, have a conversation with your supervisor to identify those gaps and those experiences that you need. Now, when I went from Cleveland to Virginia, it was actually a snowstorm that precipitated me to go and look for another job. Because I was like, I could not do another winter here in Cleveland. So I get to Virginia and then a snowstorm happens. Like a year later, we had this huge snowstorm and we were shut down for like 12 days. And this was before Zoom, Teams, all of that stuff. So in doing that and looking at the position descriptions for those jobs and having conversations, I was strategic about where I wanted to go. I wanted to go below the Mason-Dixon line, stay on the East Coast, go to a warmer climate, and had to have an international airport. So I was real clear about where I actually wanted to go. So I get to Virginia. I actually went through 2 boxes of business cards because I liked Virginia and I liked the Virginia Community College system. And then subsequently, a position opened up in Maryland. And I said, well, let me go pull the vice president's position description. And I looked and I saw what I needed and where some of the gaps were. I had a conversation with my supervisor and he opened up some doors for me in order to get that skill set. I applied for a few positions and those that I did not get, I always reminded myself that this was just practice and not to beat myself up that, well, you didn't get that job, you're not worthy, because I knew who I was and who I was here to serve. So I just considered it practice. And then getting to Maryland and being the vice president, there were so many areas of opportunities and areas of growth that I was able to experience. And it was when I became vice president, maybe 3 years in, I started going and meeting other presidents. And I started thinking, well, wait a minute now. If they can be a president, I absolutely know for certain that I can be a president. And so I sat down and I went through position descriptions. I picked where I wanted to go. And Kansas City was not on that list because I had never been to Kansas City. I wanted to stay at or below the Mason-Dixon line on the East Coast. I didn't know anybody in Missouri. Well, I went through a leadership program and I met someone who was from Kansas City and she and I became best buddies. Well, a job opened up here. And I said, well, let me go ahead and apply. So I applied. I was in 3 searches at the same time. I do not recommend that for anyone because it is very stressful. It's a lot of money that you have to put out there in order to go and interview at the campuses. And Metropolitan Community College Penn Valley campus was actually on that list. And I became a finalist here and in Chattanooga. So I said, okay, Lord, you know what, where you need me to go is where I will go. And I landed here, but it was because of the experiences that I had with presidents when I started meeting presidents and I started meeting some good presidents and I started meeting some where I was like, well, I think I might be able to do this and do it well. So let me put my foot in the water and see. And then I started swimming.
And swim upstream, you have been doing, my friend, you have been doing that. And I just love what you said about being comfortable enough to assess where you are and identify your gaps. Sometimes that's not always a pleasant experience because sometimes we know, and I've been through it myself, and I'm sure others have too, where you look at what you're doing, you look at what you've accomplished, you look at the next job and the next level, and you say, you know what, I'm ready. I'm ready for this. My resume I think is good enough, but you're not willing to do that internal reflection, pulling your resume out, looking at the jobs that you're aspiring to get into and saying, maybe I've not done enough in academic affairs in terms of pathways work or something. Maybe I've not been involved in capital projects or master planning or strategic planning, whatever it may be. Maybe my partnerships in the community have been more exterior and I've not really been involved. So, I love that approach. And I think everyone listening, I hope that you gathered that it's important to be real with yourself and then be open to learning, outside of the areas where you're really strong, because those are the gaps that once you fill them, you're comfortable, as Ty said, you're comfortable taking these interviews for these jobs on these different stages in different cities and systems. And you've done the work to get yourself to that point.
If I may,
yeah, go ahead.
If I may add that a lot of people, they say they want to be, I want to be a college president. I want to be a college president because I think they make money. No, we don't. We don't.
Thank you for putting that out there. We don't get rich in this sector.
Yeah, you're not getting rich. You might go ahead and get some stocks, get some Bitcoins, because this is not, but more importantly, the president's seat is more than a name, right? It is so much more than just being a president. You are serving faculty, staff, students, the community, and you have to be yourself, but you have to know that this seat is far greater than just the title, because if you just want the title, you shouldn't even apply because it will eat you up.
Thank you for that. And that's a great segue because I'm going to maximize every bit of this hour with you so I can squeeze out all of that stuff that's in your head for the folks listening. Talk a little bit about, because I know being authentic is a big part of your leadership toolkit. I mean, that's where you lead from. Are there other aspects of your leadership ethos that you feel are important to lead from that you can share with us?
Being authentic is one of them. And, I've had to modify that a bit because everyone can't take my authenticness because it can come across as being an aggressive Black woman or she intimidates me. And so I've had to round those edges out a bit because everyone can't receive all of me in a gallon jug. So I've had to modify that. But I will also say that, communication, people say, well, communication is important. Well, in this seat, it is critically important because there could be one single thing and people are always looking for a crack in the door so they can just kick it down and say, see, I knew you weren't going to do it. I knew you were about, they would just tear it up. So keeping the cracks minimum to none with keeping communication open, even if it is, not all communication is good, but it's about how you deliver it. And so I've had to work and coach myself on, well, okay, you have to lessen the intensity in your voice so that people can receive your kindness and not feel as if, well, is she really being kind, or did I just get beat up? I'm not so sure what happened. So I want people to be clear about the conversations that we're actually having. But then also, I talk about caring about people, and people will show up how you care for them. So even if it is sending a birthday card, like I send birthday cards to every single faculty, staff member that I have here at the campus. I write welcome back notes to every single faculty and staff person at the beginning of the fall semester. Everybody gets a note from me. So all summer I sit and I write notes for them because they appreciate that and they know that, oh, you know what, she remember my birthday. Or she remembers that it's time for us to come back and that we have to all show up. But the other thing is how we show that your energy level and how you show up to work, right? Because if I show up to work tired, like, well, I got to go to work today, and I come in here, okay, this is not a presidential word, so don't judge me. I come in here looking raggedy, hair done, clothes wrinkled.
No judgment zone.
People are like, well, what kind of president are we working with here? If she coming like that, if I'm like, oh, my weekend was all right, but I got this going on. People don't want to hear that. They don't want to hear that. They want to know that you are here, you are high energy, you are saying good morning, you are walking around. So I have Chuck Taylors. I have two offices. I have Chuck Taylors in both my offices. I put them on and I walk around. So I show up and say hello to people. Now, sometimes they're like, oh my gosh, she's walking around again. We got to tell people. But walking around, saying hello to people, show them that you care, keeping communication open, even if it is difficult conversations, but then also advocating for your people, right? Now, it's hard to advocate for someone when they do something wrong and you know what's wrong, but you still have to advocate for them and use it as a teachable moment, but advocating for you. I can't tell you, when I first got here to Penn Valley, this campus was raggedy. It was nasty. The windows were dirty. The floors, I was like, well, who coming to school here? And so we had to have all God's children come and have a come to Jesus meetings. Like, so this campus is going to be clean. Like, the carpets are going to be clean. The offices are going to be clean, because if we have students coming from impoverished homes where they walk around and they see dirt, they don't want to come to school and be in dirt too. Just like you don't want to come to work in dirt. So we need to keep it clean and keep it welcoming. So it has taken me about 4 good years to get people to know that when you come to Penn Valley, it is going to be immaculate. And facilities knows that this campus has to be clean, because when our students show up, that is it. Now, the last thing I'll say is allowing people to think as if there were no box. You know, we use the term, think outside the box. Well, let's think outside the box. Well, clearly you put yourself in a box already. You're trying to think outside of it. So why don't you just think as there is no box, but then don't allow resources to dictate the type of program or services you want to do. So when our team members, when they say, you know what, we want to start a Wolfpack Navigator person. Well, how much does that cost? Well, it might be too much. Well, don't worry about the cost. Just build the program and identify the budget, and then we'll find the dollars. Because they shouldn't worry, they don't have to worry about that. They shouldn't be worried about, right? That's not, build the program. Let's pilot it for our students. Let's see how successful it is, and we'll find the dollars to support it. Period.
No box, no box.
Think as if there were no box.
Love that, love that. So I've got about a few minutes left here. So as I mentioned, I'm going to get every ounce of information I can from you today. You know, as you're aware, you know, there's intensive focus right now on identifying and rooting out embedded practices and structures that run counter to diversity, equity, you know, and inclusion. So based on your overall experiences as a leader in our sector and a leader just in general, do you feel we need to continue the laser focus on not just closing equity gaps, but putting in the work we need to create environments that mirror our shifting societal dynamics?
Yes, but we need to not do it because it's the new in thing. We need to not just create statements just to have statements, right? Because when we start doing the work and we start peeling back that onion, everyone is not going to be happy about that, right? So how do we help those who are going to be uncomfortable feel comfortable as we have these difficult conversations? And they are conversations that we have to have. And then the other thing is we have to be able to confront it on a daily basis, because it happens all the time, and not just wait for a program to happen to have the conversation. But how do you address it when you see a faculty member, or you hear, let's just say you hear a faculty member making a derogatory comment about a young Black woman? How do you give them the tools in order to address it, and then for them to feel comfortable with doing it and not feel as if there's going to be some backlash or some type of consequences that they've addressed with their faculty, which means we have to create the support systems for the faculty and for the staff to have those conversations, because everyone, they're not as bold as you and I to have a conversation and say, well, no, you probably shouldn't call someone's hair, say a Black woman's hair looks like dog hair because it's a different color. Like, people are not, they're not comfortable yet in order to do that. But how do we create an environment where there can be that type of comfort and begin to address it? Because while it's the new thing, but it has always been a thing, right? And it wasn't until COVID happened, the deaths of all the Black men happened. It wasn't until all of that started happening, oh, you know, we need to focus on inclusion engagement. But no, Black people, we've been doing that for a long time. But now that it's out, that the spotlight is on it, now it's time to really talk about it. We've been talking about it for a long time.
No, and I was just going to say, I mean, you hit it on the head. I think the work that's done on these kinds of things, it happens in the trenches. It happens at the level where faculty and staff and students are having these conversations. And it's not easy. I have an example where an African-American colleague of mine in another system, he was asked to lead this new DEI committee. And one of the quotes that he gave me when I was talking to him, I wrote it down because it was so powerful. He said that he was asked to lead this initiative, but he finds it challenging because there are white faculty and staff that don't even recognize that there are disparities. So you're asking for the work to be done, but the culture is not primed in a way for those kinds of conversations.
And then they'll say, those aren't our students. Our students are not from low income, first generation students. We don't need a food pantry because our students aren't like that. Our students are not at risk. And so, when I came here, my welcome message, it was our students are not at risk, but of promise.
That's powerful.
Because if we always think about them in a deficit mindset, then that's how we're going to approach them. But if we switch gears and we say they're of promise, then we're going to make everything possible for them to be intentional to get their education. For them to be intentional, not us be intentional. Right. For them to be intentional, but we have to show that they can be.
And see, that's a powerful statement in itself, because I know even I've been guilty at some point along the way of focusing so much of our students they're so not prepared. They're so not this. They're so not ready or able to participate in what we've got going here. But the fact of the matter is, are we prepared for them really to help them make these transitions that they need to be successful? So shifting that perspective on they're not ready to, hey, well, are we ready? Are our structure is able and willing to do what needs to be done? So you hit a great point.
That's right. Because, we talk about students aren't ready when they come, when they come to college. Well, but are we ready to receive them? I mean, ready to the point of, do we have paper towels in the bathroom? Are all the lights working in the hallways? Does the parking garage have the access so that they can get in to park their vehicles? Are we, because it goes beyond just the enrollment process.
Yes.
They got to get to the seat in the classroom or get on Zoom.
Absolutely. Absolutely. See, we're kindred spirits. I wish I had 2 hours with you today. I really, really do. And I have to mention this because I think this falls right in line with this conversation and some of the themes that you've already hit on. Just in terms of talking about DEI and having those tough discussions. I've got a real recent, almost raw example in just a few seconds that I want to relay to you that I think really speaks to what you said. And it just happened. So I said, let me mention it today when I'm talking to Tom. So it's involving President Biden's nomination of Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson. And so I was excited, like a lot of people were, to acknowledge this milestone. But I was reminded at the same time by a colleague, who well-meaning colleague, not a bad person at all. But, people don't see the significance of why we need to champion her nomination. And so forget about politics. We know she went to Harvard Law School, was editor of the Harvard Law Review, public defender, a judge for 9 years, 3 federal clerkships, one of those on the Supreme Court. So her qualifications are impeccable. But, when I offered this viewpoint to a colleague, he was more focused on, well, the conversation needs to not be about the judge's skin color as part of the conversation. So, what I did, taking what you were saying earlier about just being willing to engage inside that moment, which is sometimes not easy to do, because you don't want to offend, I spoke to him about, out of the 115 justices who have ever served on the court, 112 of them have been white. 108 of them have been white men. This goes back to 98. So the numbers tell the story of underrepresentation and a system that's not been inclusive. So when you spoke, it just made me think about that exchange and the fact that he left the conversation, I think, a little more aware and understanding of why there are many folks that say this is a wonderful thing that this has happened. So, I thank you for giving me that perspective this morning or this afternoon, because it kind of pushes home the things that you and I have been talking about. I'm looking at our time to make sure that we're in good shape. Go ahead.
Is my time up?
No, you're good. Go ahead.
Because, one of the critical things about being a human being and this country that we call the United States of America is that some people say we don't see color. But you have to see my color because I'm judged by everything I do based upon my color. And because she is an African-American woman who has all these accolades, people don't want to acknowledge it at all, right? But you saw her color when she went to Harvard, when she was appointed judge. You saw her color then, but now when it comes to the Supreme Court, you don't want to see her color. But she is her color, and she is an African-American woman who will be the first Supreme Court justice.
Absolutely. So, you spoke a little bit about this, and I want to go back to it, just in terms of your leadership experience, being an African-American woman, and being at that level, and how you've had to deal with stereotypes, you had to deal with expectations and perceptions from others that are in the majority. How you mentioned how you've had to sort of change direction and reshape your communication styles and other kinds of things. Ty, how did you keep yourself grounded? Because you must have felt sometimes overwhelmed by that pressure as an African-American woman.
I have I think a really good spiritual foundation. And it is because of that I've been able to move in this space, right? And because sometimes, I'll wake up at 1 o'clock in the morning, like, okay, Lord, what am I supposed to know, do, say today? Or help me be able to deliver the message that I'm supposed to, so this person still walks away feeling whole and cared about, even though it's a difficult conversation. But it is how can I say this? You have to have, old grown folks used to say, a strong constitution. Like, you have to have that constitution in order to be in this seat, but particularly for an African-American woman, because I'm tall. Well, I'm 5'5", but I am tall. I wear high heel shoes. I'm tall in stature, and people judge that. I work out, so I'm fit. I look younger than what I really am, and so people take all that into consideration. So when I walk into a room, I automatically have a presence. And because of that, I want people to still feel as if they can come up to me and have a conversation. So I smile a lot. I smile often. I say hello to people all the time, just so that they can feel comfortable, because, it's like students coming to school, we have to be prepared for them. So I have to be prepared to receive people, but having that strong constitution and strong foundation and being able to know who I am and whose I am has allowed me to move in this space.
Thank you for that. As we get close to being done today, just again, our conversation has sparked so many different questions I have in my head now. What can we do more of to help students process the many social justice issues that we face as a nation and we keep facing, because our campuses are microcosms of society.
Mm-hmm.
When George Floyd was killed, it almost seemed to me, being in the role that I'm in now and just talking to students, they were having a difficult time processing that and dealing with that. What are your thoughts on that, to create that for students?
It is, students want to be heard and they want to be listened to, not to be told to do something different, not to be told not to go march, but to be told, so if you go march, just be careful. And to listen to them and to say, how else can we, what else can we do in order to, the energy that you have, how do we use that energy in a positive way in order to impact other students? How do we use that to make change? And so, you know, listening to students, but then also, you know, just being still and being with them, right? And that doesn't mean that you have to go march with them, but just going, sitting with them and asking them, you know, how are you doing today? Just that one question can change the whole trajectory of a student's day. Because these times have not been kind to Black and brown students, and because these times have not been kind to students from low socioeconomic status, you know, I can't tell you the number of students who have said, you know, I'm about to get put out meaning getting kicked out their home. I'm getting ready to get put out. I can't pay my electricity bill. I can't feed my children, but directing them to the resources so that they can still survive, and then letting them know that you're going to be there for them, good, bad, ugly, or indifferent. Sometimes we make it more complicated.
Yes, absolutely. And it's as simple sometimes as creating that space for them to be able to engage you. Very simple.
Yeah, just open, you know, we say we have open doors, but literally you open the door and you walk out your door and go to them. Don't wait for them to come to you.
Absolutely. Well, Dr. Lee, our time is winding up. You know, I just have to, again, just thank you so much for sharing your powerful story of pushing boundaries, shaping your narrative to achieve success. And, you know, I'm not going to let you go without, I've not seen you, at least seen your face, that is, for a long time. And so I want to take this opportunity just to say to you on a personal note that, you know, I'm just so proud of what you are doing to impact the lives of students and how you mentor aspiring leaders. I get so full just thinking about what you're doing, what you have done. Any parting words for our audience today, just to kind of sum up some of the things we talked about?
Well, you know, thank you, Daryl, for the invitation, and thank you for remaining true to your journey and your passion. And I will say to the audience, you know who you are, know whose you are, be your authentic self, be kind to yourself, and be kind to others, because we are all enough for the work that has to be done. We are all enough.
Well, I think that says it succinctly and perfectly. Thank you, Dr. Lee. It's been a pleasure talking to you today. I said Dr. Lee, Ty. I hope you all that were listening today enjoyed today's session. Thank you so much.
Thank you.